Okay, now let's proceed to our second topic. The first topic, we talked about language and communication as an overview. Now let's proceed to talk communication. Against all odds, Helen Keller had come to understand the essential function that language plays in all societies, namely that of communication. So the word communicate comes from the Latin verb communicare, meaning to share, to impart thought, which is common. So we communicate by agreeing, consciously or unconsciously, to call an object, a movement, or an abstract concept by a common name. So we, as humans, try to name things that we don't really know. Muna nga maghimot og mga ngan, mga kung maghimot og mga ngan, kinahanglan nga tanan mo agree, dili kay ikaw ra ang magbuot-buot. That is the purpose of communication. So we communicate by agreeing. For example, speakers of English have agreed to call the color of grass green, even though we have no way of comparing precisely how two persons actually experience this color. What we share is the agreement to call similar sensations green. So any system of language consists of publicly accepted symbols by which individuals try to share private experiences. Now, another example for that is the word narcissistic. As we all know, narcissistic comes from the Greek word narcissus. So Narcissus is a person who loves himself. That's why he always look at his face in the river. So he really likes to admire himself. So because of that, people then agreed to derive or to call a person who loves himself narcissistic, based from Narcissus itself. Okay. So obviously, our communication is not limited to spoken language. We communicate directly through facial expression. Summoning facial expression. This is more on imuhang purma sa imuhang noun. Okay? Body stance, imong nilihukan, imuhang gesture, and tone of voice. Maila po nimo kung nasuko ba siya or dili tungod sa iyahang tunada sa iyang tingog, and indirectly through systems of signs and symbols. Another way to communicate is with the use of the signs and symbols. So mga sinyas, such as writing, algebraic equations, musical scores, painting, code flags, and road signs. So mo na siya like another way of communication. So dili lang jud ta focus sa spoken language. So as we all know from experience, the spoken word does not communicate all that we know about the social situation. So dili lang kay spoken language ra ang atong basihan. Okay, we can usually tell when someone says it was good to meet you, whether they really mean it. Okay, we can also tell if they are sad from their demeanor sa ilang nilihukan, even if they just said I'm fine in response to a question, how are you? The cues are sometimes tone of voice, and sometimes they are not sound cues at all, but facial expressions, eye contact, or other body language. So dili siya ang spoken language kuno is not the basis aron makaila ka sa kataw, or aron makahibaw ka kung unsa na siyang tawhana. It's more on the facial expression when he or she said that certain sentence, or the body language. We often say when someone would ask us question nga, how are you? We would often say nga, I'm fine, pero ang imong noun is magulanon. Nakita na, so that means when you look at the person is not really fine because of the facial expression. So communication is not based on spoken word itself, but also with the stance, the gesture, and the facial expression. So there is an increasing amount of research on non-linguistic communication. So we call though the facial expression, the contact, the body language as non-linguistic communication. Much of this communication may be universal. Okay, for instance, humans the world over appear to understand facial expressions in the same way. That is, they are able to recognize a happy, sad, surprised, angry, disgusted, or afraid face. So we as humans, we can really recognize when a person is happy, sad, surprised, angry, or disgusted, you know. Okay, but much of this communication is also culturally variable. In the chapter on the concept of culture, we discussed how the distance between people standing together is culturally variable. So bisan ang distansya sa duha ka tawo, naapod na siya message. There are some countries nga kung muduol ka o masikit kanila, that is very offensive. So nainsulto sila or feeling nila kay naabusad sila. And also there are some countries nga it's okay for them. So mo na gitawag nato culturally variable depending sa country, sa cultures o sa country. In the realm of facial expression, different cultures have different rules about the emotions that are acceptable to express. One study compared how Japanese and Americans express emotion. Individuals from both groups were videotaped while they were shown films intended to evoke feelings of fear and disgust. So when the subjects saw the films by themselves without other people present, they showed the same kinds of facial expressions of fear and disgust. But there was a cultural effect too. When an authority figure was present during the videotaping, the Japanese subjects tried to mask their negative feelings with a half smile more often than did the Americans. So, kung sila ra kuno, so ang ilang study no is or on Japanese and Americans, unsa ilang kalahian, kung mutanaw sila og kuan film nga ma-evoke sa feelings of fear and disgust. So, they later found out nga ang Japanese kuno subjects they tried to mask ilang taguan ang ilang negative feelings kung naay magtan-aw nila with a half smile. Smile ra sila bisag naghandok na dito sila. Okay, often than did the Americans. So despite all the various systems of communication available to us, we must recognize the overriding importance of spoken language. It is probably the major transmitter of culture, allowing us to share and pass on our complex configuration of attitudes, beliefs, and patterns of behavior. I think spoken language is very important in the sense that through spoken language, our culture can be passed on from generation to generation. Okay, given that the culture is in itself, so kinahanglan jud nga ma-recognize nato ang overriding importance sa spoken language. Okay, so that's all for the discussion about communication. Now, for the next topic, we're going to talk about non-human communication. Okay, that's all for this second meeting. Thank you.